Hezekiah was one of the best kings that God's people ever had. He is ranked up there with David. And this was at a time when the nations were split, and we see this back and forth of good king, bad king, good king, bad king, bad king, bad king, bad king, good king. And here we have Hezekiah, whose father Ahaz was one of the worst kings Israel ever had. But Hezekiah's grandfather was one of the good kings. And he took after his grandfather. And he did what was right in the eyes of God. And it resulted in victory for God's people. That is the influence that a grandparent can have, even over a parent. They have a huge influence. Even with a lost generation, there is always hope. Because if the grandparents are faithful, there's always hope that the grandparents will be able to have an influence on the grandchild if the parents are walking away, are not walking in the way they should. The next generation can always be brought back. And grandparents, they seem to bridge this gap that's left by the parents many times. There's hope, expectation in the relationship between a grandparent and a grandchild. If we look at the book of Ruth, now, if you read the book of Ruth, you look at the book and you say, man, this is about Ruth, who's the daughter-in-law of Naomi. The whole book seems to be focused on her, this faithful daughter-in-law. But if we're not careful, we're going to miss a very powerful message of the importance of a grandparent in the life of a grandchild. See, Boaz and Ruth get married. And I suggest read the book of Ruth. It's important. And they have a son. So if we go to the book of Ruth, let's go ahead and just read a couple verses out of here. Ruth chapter 4. We're going to do chapter 4, verses 13 through 17. So Boaz took Ruth, and she became his wife. And he went into her, and the Lord gave her conception, and she bore a son. And it's at this point that we see a shift. We see a shift in the story. Then the women said to Naomi, okay, we were focusing on Ruth. Now we're focusing on her mother-in-law. Because they say to Naomi, blessed be the Lord who has not left you this day without a redeemer. And may his name be renowned in Israel. He shall be to you a restorer of life and a nourisher of your old age. For your daughter-in-law who loves you, who is more than 7 sons, has given birth to him. Then Naomi took the child and laid him on her lap and became his nurse. And the women of the neighborhood gave him the name, saying, a son has been born to Naomi. They called him Obed. He is the father of Jesse, the father of David. There's this sudden refocusing from Boaz and Ruth. And it's put on Naomi, and it shows the importance that a grandparent and a grandchild can play on each other. It is important. That relationship is important. The very book of Ruth exists for us to read and to enjoy so that we can see that these people were the grandparents and the great-grandparents of David, which is who the Jews always look back to as the pinnacle of Israel, was King David. And we're given this book so we can see his grandparents. And there are so many ways that grandparents have such an effect on their kids. And I want to kind of talk about 2 of them, because I think both of these played into this story.